Hello, welcome back to the podcast. This is Starcaster Remarks. My name is Ryan Chambers. We want to thank our sponsor, DraftKings Sportsbook. If I can even talk, see, I always say that for some reason. Go and use that promo code THB, and the next time you go and use their app for a special little offer from them, we appreciate them for being our sponsor of this episode, of this pod, and all of THPN. Tonight, we are talking about several things. We're talking about the draft, and we're also going to be talking about free agent frenzy that was today. Some very good news, some exciting news, and maybe some mixed up feelings about how this went. We'll see how this goes. Chris is not here tonight because he is at a wedding. Congratulations to Jared and his wife, and James is busy working. So I had to call in the cavalry from the AHL today. To my left is Josh, and to my right is Sam. They're both admins with the Jake Ottinger Fan Club and Hockey Talk group on Facebook. Very, very knowledgeable guys when it comes to draft stuff. They're a lot better than I am when it comes to that sort of stuff. And this is not the first time y'all have been on, right, guys?
No, sir. Always happy to be here. Always a fun time.
Yep. So Josh is actually on the East Coast.
I'm at North Carolina. Yes, sir.
I was right. And then Sam is down in San Antonio, pretty close to where I am, and out in the middle of nowhere, West Texas. Well, I say close. I mean, it's still like 3 hours, but 3 hours is close when it comes to West Texas. So, okay. So, anyways, let's just get straight into this. We're gonna discuss the free agent stuff first, because that's the stuff that we need to talk about first, because that's the exciting news. And then we'll get into the draft a little bit, which you guys are really knowledgeable about. And then, heck, if we have time, we'll talk about whatever the heck you want. And I know we were just briefly mentioning off camera that, maybe we need to talk some Jim Nill stuff. And Sam might have a certain opinion about this. So, but that's okay.
Let him take that one.
All right. So, free agent frenzy started today at 11 o'clock Central Time, I believe, or maybe it's 10:30 Central Time, something like that. And I incorrectly tweeted, "Hey, don't expect too much today." And boy, was I wrong. Not only did we make a big splash in the free agent today, guys, we also got quality and quantity. Obviously, we need to talk about this first. The first one being that Matt Duchene is now a member of the Dallas Stars. Go figure. He gets bought out literally yesterday, and he comes to the Stars. And it's not just the fact that he comes to the Stars, but it's the term and the amount that he comes in. And it seems ridiculous that he would come in at 1 year, $3 million for this one season. He's coming off of a season where he had a down year compared to the year before, but still 22 goals, 34 assists, 56 points in 71 games. Not bad at all. Let me get Josh's thoughts first, and then I get Sam's, but what did you guys think about the Matt Duchene signing? I thought it was kind of out of left field.
I thought it was a huge signing. Obviously, you kind of heard that the Stars were kicking the tires on somebody like Blake Wheeler. And to be honest with you, I wasn't really excited about that. But once I saw that Duchene got bought out, I thought he would have been a much better fit here. And I'm glad that Nill went and got him. And I think the reason you saw him sign for 1 year, $3 million, is because Nashville is essentially paying him $7 million not to play for him this year. So he's making $10 million this year. The Stars are just a small portion of that. So the fact that we can get him on a 1 year, $3 million contract to come play on the second or third line for us this year, I think it's huge. I think he's going to be a huge compliment to our top 6 or top 9. And I think as much as I love Domi, I think Domi was a great fit for us here last year. I think the Stars upgraded his spot on the roster, and they're paying less than what a team is likely going to have to pay for Domi this offseason. So love the signing by Nill. It's a 1 year deal too. So if it goes wrong, okay, he's not here at the end of the year. So I'm not too worried about that. He's 32 years old. He could find himself kind of in a Pavelski-like situation where if he does well, you may sign him to another 1 or 2 year contract, 1 or 2 year deal after this one. So overall, I think this was probably the best forward signing you could have if you were Jim Nill this offseason in terms of what you could realistically spend and the kind of term that you get for the kind of player that you get. So very happy with the deal overall. And I honestly don't see any downside to it.
Sam, what'd you think?
I'm pretty much right up the alley with Josh here. I mean, whenever you can get a player for like Duchene for $3 million, I mean, $1 million more than Dadonov, and don't get me wrong, love Dadonov, but Duchene is a whole different caliber of player. He's the guy who's going to go out score. He definitely, I think, opens up a whole new element to our offense. So I look at it a lot where he scores a lot off the break, like Rupe. And really, right now, Rupe is the only threat to be able to take the puck off the rush and score one-on-one. Duchene opens up that option. Really, even for a down year when Nashville was pretty bad, he still put up at least 20 goals last year. So the fact you get a 20-goal scorer for $3 million, that has to be arguably one of the top signings of free agency. Yes, there's some concerns about his defense. My point is he's now going to be a winger for us. Winger is traditionally the least important when it comes to defensive responsibilities. Heck, if you have a winger who sits in the middle of the ice all game, just cherry picking, guess what? One of their D-men probably needs to cover them because otherwise it's a breakaway every time otherwise. So wingers still have defensive responsibilities, but the amount of offensive upside he brings, I think, heavily outweighs any amount of defensive deficiencies that he would have. For $3 million, in my opinion, from what I've seen so far, probably best signing of free agency so far.
Yeah. And I mean, he's just a year removed from putting up 43 goals with Nashville in 2021, 2022, 86 points. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to get back to that level with Dallas, but if he can, sniff 60 again, like he did this year on a better team, realistically, I think he could probably push 70. I think this is an absolutely huge signing. I think at the end of the year, when you start looking at, all right, who produced the most for what they're being paid, I think Duchene is probably going to be near the top of that list. So very good signing from Nill today.
So there's a couple of questions when it comes to Matt Duchene and kind of his character. I've heard a couple of questions about his character and stuff like that. I'm 100% with you guys when it comes to the talent, when it comes to the value, the term, everything is perfect. Like there's no harm in this contract whatsoever. Like even maybe 2 years, I still would have been like, hey, cool, awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I did want to talk about is what I had seen on Twitter, and I didn't even realize this about Matt Duchene. I don't know if you guys have heard anything about it, but apparently he is a, quote, locker room cancer, was one of the tweets that I had heard. I don't know if you guys can speak to it or if you had heard anything. Let's just assume that he is. Is it really that big of a deal coming into this locker room when the Stars are very well known for having a very high morale when it comes to the group of guys that they've got?
Sam, I'll let you go ahead and take.
Oh,
cool.
Okay.
I'll go. Go for it, buddy. Go for it.
Okay, so a little bit of my background. I played sports pretty much my entire life growing up. Winning makes everything better. Yeah, there's always going to be one or two guys in your locker room who are not going to be team players. They're kind of out for themselves. As long as the team is winning, that has a calming effect on the locker room for those quote-unquote locker room cancer players. Whenever Parise and Suter came out of Minnesota, there was rumors about that. Everything I've heard about Suter here is that other than he wants to play on the side that he wants to play on, he's a locker room guy now. Like, really, as long as we keep winning, I think the locker room cancer stuff kind of goes away. Like we said last year, Nashville, not the best season. I can understand how there's going to be some rumors and it's so subjective because what is too much anger in a locker room that's losing, where people are disappointed that they're not winning, they expect to win, and what is motivation? And so depending on what the media wants to portray it as, it ultimately could be either way. So I personally hadn't seen that, but I think coming to the Stars right off the back of a Western Conference Final appearance, the possibility of going back again with the team that we have, I think we're setting up for an exciting season. So I'm not too worried about that personally. If it does become an issue, then you're only paying him $3 million for a single year.
Yep.
And then he's gone.
Exactly.
Yep, exactly. And to be honest, I mean, I had heard a lot of the stuff that you're hearing, Ryan. I hadn't really heard a whole lot of it over the last, few seasons in Nashville. I think a lot of his reputation for being a locker room cancer stems from his time in Colorado and Ottawa and Columbus. And that was back when Colorado wasn't good, kind of thing. I mean, he played on some bad Colorado teams before they started getting, the McKinnons and Landeskog's and Rantanens of the world. He played with Ottawa. He played with Columbus. He hasn't really played for a true winning team like he's going to step into with Dallas. And I think Sam hit the nail on the head perfectly. I think winning fixes everything. And he's coming into a locker room with guys like Joe Pavelski and stuff like that. And even Ryan Suter, who's been around the block a couple of times. I think that if there's any locker room in the league that's going to be able to mitigate any, locker room cancer, as it will, I think it would be the Stars locker room. I know they said the same thing about Sagan when he got brought in. They said the same thing about Patrick Sharp when we traded for him. A lot of the stuff that they had going on off the ice, and didn't hear about any of that kind of stuff here. So I'm not sure what we do differently in Dallas, but I think the guys in the locker room just have a different way of running things. And that if there are any issues, they don't make it to the media, because I really haven't heard much of anything aside from the owner calling out a couple of players a couple of years ago. But outside of that, I think that everything.
We're still talking about that now.
Ironically, I forgot it was after a Nashville game too. So
yeah, that's true.
I forgot about that and the Sagan stuff. Yeah, Sagan, whenever he came, was supposed to be a locker room cancer too.
Exactly. So. And like you said, if Duchene comes in and he's just the worst human to walk the planet, okay, he's gone in a year. It doesn't really matter that much. So I think it's a very low risk, high reward kind of signing, and I have no issues with it at all whatsoever.
And that he doesn't, even if he doesn't have a good relationship with like Pete DeBoer, for example, a lot of the younger people that are younger than us won't know, but there's the whole relationship between Brett Hall and Ken Hitchcock. They did not like each other. They did not. Now Brett Hall would listen to him every once in a while, but what happened? Exactly. What happened? They won a Stanley Cup together. Okay.
Yep.
They're entrenched together for eternity. That's just how it works in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Okay. So I think it's going to be okay. I know some people are worried about it, and he's going to come in and he's going to mess up the mojo that we got with the current guys. But there's too many good guys in this locker room. Jamie Benn, Joe Pavelski, Jay Cottinger, Jason Robertson, the guy we just talked to last week, me and my brothers, Logan Stankov, and he is fantastic. I mean, just
it was a great interview last week, by the way. I still can't believe I got him. It was fantastic.
But they're not just good players, but they're good character guys, right? And no offense, but like there's not the Evander Kanes of the world. We don't really have any of those in our locker room, so I think it's gonna be fine. So, anything about Matt Duchene?
I hope he
leading us to the cup. What?
I hope he puts up 50. Yeah. Wouldn't that be something?
50,
where do you have him slotting in the lineup, Sam?
Oh, that's a good question.
I mean, probably second line. We're not touching Pavelski and Sons on the first.
Yeah, I think that top line's the only one that's cemented.
I personally, I would say, I either put him with Wyatt and Ben, or you toss him with Sagan and I don't know who we would have.
I guess right now it's probably Marchment, but
I'm not gonna lie, I kind of like that setup.
Yeah, I think
toss Marchment in front. Sagan can break him out, give him some passes that let him rush up the ice, beat people wide, and then Marchment's there to finish.
Yeah,
mind you, Marchment actually needs to finish this year, but the dude got in position. So
saw flashes of it last year, but seems to be consistent this year.
Hey. Shooting is one of the most inconsistent things in hockey, so his shooting percentage goes up. I think he'll be fine. But
I would agree.
So fingers crossed.
So I would like to see him with Sagan personally. that the de facto 2A, 2B line, whatever you want to call it. I just think if you put Dadonov on a different line than with Ben and Johnston, that can lose some of his effectiveness. I mean, so
that's kind of that was because I was kind of teetering back and forth between where I wanted to put him, and that was kind of the reasoning why I didn't want to put him with Ben and Johnston, because I liked Dadonov on that line.
But you have that option if Dadonov is struggling or something.
For sure,
right?
For sure.
So
our top nine is filthy.
our top nine is disgusting.
Yeah,
actually,
it's the deepest top nine we've had in a while, and I'm excited to see it. We're gonna win so many games 10-9 this year. It's gonna be great.
Probably, I would argue probably since 2008 when the Stars, well, other than last year, when they made it to the Western Conference Final. So I think they just have a great team going up.
Mhm.
And I guess this is a good segue into the next part. But the Stars also signed some other dudes. They signed, shoot, my notes. They signed Craig Smith, and they also signed Sam Steele, which I thought was kind of a sneaky good move. I like Sam Steele.
I do too.
Sam Steele comes in 1 year, $850K. Smith comes in 1 year for $1 million. Smith had 16 points in 64 games. Steele had 28 points in 65 games. So that was pretty decent numbers there. I liked how he played against us in the playoffs, and maybe that's where Jim Nill saw him and thought he did pretty well.
He was annoying. He was a frustrating player to play against every time he was on the ice. It was great.
Which is exactly what you want. So
yeah.
But what this does for me, and this puts into my question, let me just ask you about this first, and then I'll ask this question. What do y'all know about Craig Smith and Sam Steele?
If I had to guess, I think Craig Smith's coming in to be the 13th forward. He's 34, 35, 36 years old. He's a good player that can come in case of injury, and you're going to have injuries. I mean, Stars kind of got lucky last year. They didn't really have much in the way of forward injuries last year, but that's the anomaly. That's not the rule. I think Craig Smith. Sorry. I think Craig Smith. That's a singer. I think Craig Smith comes in, and I think he'll probably see between 50 and 60 games again this year because I think things get shuffled around. I think you may see people get nicked up, things like that. Realistically, I think he probably takes over in the Kiviranta role, and we're paying him about the same to do so. So I think it's good. He's a good veteran piece to have back there that can really kind of play anywhere in the lineup. I know he played a lot of, top 6, top 9 minutes when he was with Nashville earlier in his career. So he's got that experience with him. I think he's solid there. And Sam Steele, I think, comes in day one is probably one of our fourth line wingers. Probably filling in for that Glendening spot that we lost with him going to Tampa. And like I said earlier, he's a pest to play against. He's annoying. And if you have an annoying player that can put up 25 to 30 points a season, absolutely sign me up. Throw him on the fourth line for $850,000 a year. Done.
Yep. What do you think, Sam?
So I'm gonna start with Sam Steele because the dude was a former first rounder. He had one, I know, like the season after he got drafted, he put up 120 points something in juniors. Like he has some offensive upside and talent. Mm-hmm. I think I was reading something. Too. Yeah, he's got plenty of time.
He is young. Yeah, that's true.
I think I read something not too long ago where he started the season on Minnesota's first line last year, got demoted and pretty much was a scratch. But I mean, again, it's $850K. If he doesn't pan out, you cut him. But again, it's another low risk, extremely high upside signing. And on the fourth line, whenever we had, don't get me wrong, for what Glendening was and how much we paid him, totally okay with him. But Sam Steele has far more offensive upside than Glendening ever could. So I like the signing. Again, I think he's going to fight with Dellandrea for a spot. I love Dellandrea personally. I think he can be a solid player as well. But he's got to show something too this year, so it'll be interesting. Smith, I'm not too familiar with, if I'm completely honest. He seems like a fine signing. Everything I've seen on Twitter today, his stat profile, his metrics, looks like a solid signing. He's a fourth liner. Looks like an upgrade over the guys that we got rid of. So I like it. I mean, we were talking about our top 9 from top to bottom. This is probably the deepest I've seen. Like Utah's, if you're running Foxa, Dellandrea, and Sam Steele or Smith on that fourth line, that's a loaded fourth line. Like I would love to see Sam Steele and Dellandrea just pester the hell out of people.
They both of them play a style that reminds me a lot of Jason Dickinson, where they may put up some points, Dickinson. But they are going to, their main goal is to piss off the other team, not necessarily with physicality, but just being annoying. And I think you got 2 of them now that you can stick on the fourth line. And realistically, I mean, guys like that can play up and down the lineup. You have injuries or something like that, you need somebody to fill in on the second or third lines. You can slot one of those guys at one of the wings up there and be fine. Like I really like the Sam Steele signing.
Yeah, the Steele in a pinch, he can play and
tops.
Oh, lost me.
There we
Sorry,
are.
my internet's
There you
bad.
go.
West Texas internet, yay!
I thought it was me for a second because Sam stopped talking.
No.
You froze. I was like, oh no.
No, I think you have the best internet of all of us, Josh. Honestly.
Probably.
Well, what I was saying was, Still can jump into a top 6 role in a pinch. St. Delandry has shown he can be a middle 6 forward, but he's most effective when he's a 4th liner. So it's just, it's excellent to see the kind of depth that we've got. But there's so many questions I need to ask you guys. But it really sucks to see Yoel Kiviranta go. He'll forever be enshrined because of that Game 7 against
Texas
Colorado.
Hockey Hall of Fame because of that one game. Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And obviously with Duchene signing here, he's the replacement for Domi leaving. And then the one I'm actually the most upset about is Glendening. And let me tell you why about Glendening. He's kind of dug his way into my heart a little bit, to be honest with you, with what he does. He showed so much effort all of the time, and I love these kind of guys that they'll just dive and block everything. He was absolutely one of the best penalty killers I think I've ever seen. And I mean, his face-off percentage alone in his career is just ridiculous as well.
That's what I'm gonna miss. Is
that's
some of the dots.
Right. And I think we have enough guys that will be okay, but that is going to be a huge hit to that particular stat. And so, I mean, I really hate to see those guys go, but the main question I wanted to ask you about this is Glendening signed in Tampa for $850K for 2 years. So the only thing I can think of, I mean, surely Dallas would have paid him that. The only thing I'm thinking of is that Dallas was not willing to go term. He was just willing to say, we'll give you a 1-year deal instead of 2. Tampa was willing to give him 2, and that's why he went to Tampa. I don't know if there's anything else behind that. Maybe I'm looking too much into it, but I mean, does that thought process kind of make sense?
He's 34, 2-year contract. I don't give it to him. I don't like players above 35, except when their name is Joe Pavelski. that dude has fought and won against Father Time. So
you don't like Suter for the next 2 years?
No.
But
don't open that. We're gonna get into a can of worms with that.
But yes, Ryan, I would agree. I think a lot of it had to come down to term. And I also think part of it was the roster spot. I mean, I think it came down to signing a 25-year-old Steele, who we retain the rights on after his contract's up. He'll still be an RFA after the season. So we still hold on to his rights there versus giving a 2-year deal to a 34-year-old defenseman. If I have to make that pick, I'm 34-year-old forward. Sorry, you got me thinking.
I mean, he's basically a defenseman. Let's be honest.
I mean,
so.
yeah,
he is. Yeah.
But if I had to make that pick, I'm picking Sam Steele. Just because of the long-term possibilities. I'm not saying Sam Steele's going to turn into the first-round pick he was drafted to be or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I'll pay $50,000 more a year to possibly have a kid here for 3 or 4 years. So
yeah,
for sure.
I wish he was better offensively, because if he was better offensively and we could turn his face-off wins into actual production, it would have been filthy. But
it was very nice having him on the ice in the defensive zone though, because you knew most of the time you were winning that puck.
Security,
you were winning the puck off the face-off.
He's like a tight end in football. He's Jason Witten. You can always throw it to him. He's always going to catch.
But I think you did hit the nail on the head too. I think the Stars do have quite a few guys that did really well in the Dodge last year. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think we're going to miss him as much as we could if we didn't have guys like Ben, I think Ben was top 5 in the league last year in faceoffs, and
60%.
Fox was right behind him.
Hintz got better this year too.
Hintz got better. Pavelski was good in the dots. I mean, the Stars really have 4 or 5 guys that they can have step in and win any kind of draw, regardless of what side of the ice they're on. So losing Glendening sucks, but I think between the guys that we have on the roster now, I think we'll be fine.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about with the forwards, and then we'll talk about the D side, which is the surprising part.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. So this was really surprising. This free agent signing for the Dallas Stars, because I mean, I kind of expected maybe like a forward or two, especially with Glendening and Kiviranta going out, and that's what we got. We got Sam Steele and we got Craig Smith, which I think those guys are going to be good enough to fill those roles. And same with Duchene. Duchene basically is filling in for Domi. But what I didn't expect is that now that the way that the roster looks, there's not really a solidified spot for one of the two guys of Logan Stankoven or Maverick Bork, for one of those two guys to get a roster spot. Now, it doesn't seem likely that one of those guys won't make the roster, but it is a whole heck of a lot less likely now with the way that the Stars have got their lineup set up. So do you think this was by design? Do you think Jim Nill is putting pylons in Logan's and Maverick's way, saying you will
No,
make
he only
us
puts
make the hard
pylons
decision?
on the defensive side of things, and we've run into a few of those. But anyway, that's
we're not there
Tuesday's
yet. We're not
question.
there yet.
I
Hold
know.
on, hold
I'm
on.
sorry. You said pylons, and it kind of got is way out
Hold
there.
on.
So yeah. Oh my Lord, don't start with him.
Humbug.
No, go ahead.
Anyway, sorry. Continue,
my
Ryan.
first
I
crack.
apologize for the intrusion. Continue.
No, that's all right. No, but what are y'all's thoughts about that? I don't know, my crazy thought process.
You want first crack? Go for it.
I'll take first crack. I think so. Right now, the Stars have 13 forwards, 12 signed, and you have Delandria. Realistically, you've got 12 forwards, and I still have Smith as your 13th forward. I don't think, and I got no rumors to back this up. I got nothing. I have no reason to believe this. I don't see both Foxa and Marchment on the roster next season. I think one of them gets moved for a defenseman of some kind, either in a cap clearing trade, that way we can pick one up, or in a trade for a defenseman. I know Nill has already said that he's still actively looking to add to the blue line. I don't see how he does that unless he moves one of those guys.
Yeah, he said something about a trade later in July is what he told Saad Youssef, I believe.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So I don't see. I think one of them. I mean, you kind of have to have one of them go. They're the only two contracts that you can realistically move that would make any kind of dent in cap space. And I think that opens up a spot for. It's going to be a camp battle. It really is. I think everybody's going in with the assumption that Logan Stankoven's gonna magically walk in day one and have a spot on the roster, and I don't know if that's the case. I think he's good enough to, for sure, but. With him having AHL eligibility next year, I think it's also very realistic that Nill wants to put him in the minors for a season. Or at least start him off there. Get him some top 6 minutes down there. If it came down to him getting top 6 minutes there, or him playing on the fourth line with Foxa and Sam Steele, I'd rather see him in the AHL, getting those top 6 minutes where he's playing in offensive opportunities and things like that. So I think it's going to come down to it. And I don't think it's just going to be him, and I don't think it's just going to be him and Bork either. I think Matej Blumel had a really good year in the AHL this year as well. I think he could push for a spot. I mean, we have a few guys in the farm system right now that could make a push for a spot on the roster. So I think it's going to be a fun training camp to watch and see those battles play out. But right now, I don't think you can really pencil any of them in with 100% confidence right now.
I would agree. I think it comes down to ultimately who gets traded, what we get in return for that trade, and how everyone looks in training camp. Because, like it or not, money talks in the NHL. And right now we got, like Josh said, Marchment and Foxa both have modified no trade clauses. So trading is going to be a bit of a difficulty. But if they're possibly going to be moving, then it's going to open up a spot. But again, if it comes down to, we can't trade them and we need a spot for Stankoven, then I'm Josh pretty much beat me to the punch. I was thinking AHL top 6, get his feet wet in professional hockey. It's not that big of a deal to make the jump, or it is a big deal to jump straight from juniors to the NHL. I have no problem with giving pretty much anyone a season in the AHL, especially if they are going to get top 6 minutes versus, like Josh said, fourth line. No, there's no point in bringing him up if he's going to play fourth line minutes. He's not a fourth line player. Not that, he can improve his defense on the fourth line. Great. That's not the role.
That's not what he needs. Right.
Exactly. You don't want to groom him into that position.
So, and the same thing with Bork too. I'd rather see Bork back in the AHL in the top 6 role than on that fourth line. Nothing against the fourth line. It's just not the role he's playing. That's not the role he was supposed to be playing.
Yeah.
Interesting thing that I think could happen, and I say could happen, and I very small part of me thinks could happen. I think Bork could be used in a deal. I think the Stars could try. I could think the Stars could dangle him out there for a Noah Hannafin or a Brett Pesce or something, or somebody who's going to come in and play beside me or on the top line. I don't think you're trading him for a number 4 defenseman or a number 5 defenseman or anything like that. But I think if the right trade comes along, given the youth that we have on the roster, I wouldn't be entirely surprised to see Nill put Bork on to put Bork out there as trade bait. I don't see him doing it with Stankoven, but I think it's possible that we could see it happen.
I think the way that he set it up to where the forwards are stacked, and if it looks like one of either Stankoven or Bork is ready to go, and like let's just say they're just one of them is just torching up the AHL, and Marchman is having a hard time, up in Texas. I could see an opportunity for him to one of those guys to get moved up to the NHL. And then maybe Marchman gets put on the trade block. Now, the thing I hate about the reason why I don't think it's going to happen is this. Nill is very loyal to his players, but my main argument for Mason Marchman is give him one more chance.
Yep.
Because
it's a Pavelski a year.
That is exactly what I was thinking, is the fact that Pavelski did not have a very good first year. I mean, all of us remember, we're like, wait, we paid $7 million for this? And then he torched the NHL.
Sam had some fun words on that one.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So, and then with Radek Faksa, and I know Chris doesn't like Radek Faksa, but Chris isn't here, so suck it, Chris. Radek Faksa is one of the most underrated players in the NHL, in my opinion. Not necessarily when it comes to the offensive side, but he is elite defensively. I mean, and what he does for you on the penalty kill. I mean, I never see him making a defensive mistake. And then, I mean, I would love to see what his plus minus is over the season. I need to look that up. But he is so important to this team, and the analytics back it up. If you're going to look at it as advanced analytics, everything about that shows that he's one of the most elite defensive centers in the NHL. And I just don't think, with getting rid of Glendening, who was very good defensively, if we throw Faksa in a trade like that, I would be very weary about our defensive play when it comes to our forwards. So
if they move Faksa, it's the Lindy Ruff mindset. Score everything and allow everything.
I don't want to go back.
But if you
I'm just gonna say it's kind of hard to be out of position defensively whenever you never make it past the red line. So I mean,
there's some truth to that.
I
don't get me wrong. Faksa starts
more than I should, for sure. But I was looking at a lot of his advanced stuff myself the other day, and was kind of surprised at the fact that I'd been dumping on him as much as I had. But if you want to look at why plus minus is such a bad stat to look at, Radek Faksa for his career is a -11, and
that seems crazy to me. Absolutely,
because plus minus is an atrocious stat.
To
use individually.
In a game, I think in an individual game it's okay, and maybe over a short period of time, but over an 82 game season, there's so many ebbs and flows and stuff. It's stupid.
Well, I somewhat disagree. Plus minus is a fantastic stat in the context of an individual team's performance. When you're comparing players who play a similar role and similar time frames in similar situations, 5-on-5, it's fine. Whenever you're comparing a guy on Boston, regardless of who it is, he's going to have a high plus minus. They were the best team in the league last year. Versus a guy playing on Phoenix. Yeah, it's a stupid stat. Phoenix is an atrocious team. They're going to give up points on 5-on-5. One player could have a fantastic season and still be -50 because he's in Phoenix. So a guy can be average in Boston and put up plus 30. So on a team like basis, like performance and 5-on-5 basis, I don't mind plus minus. It's just people try to compare across teams, and I'm like, what are we doing here? One team is good, one team is bad. Plus minus is a team-based stat, in my opinion.
So let's get to the obvious part of free agency, and the fact that no defensemen were signed by the Dallas Stars. Not like, well, okay, Joel Hanley doesn't count. Technically he was re-signed for
does.
2 years, but
Love me some Joel Hanley.
787,000.
Throw him on the top pair right now.
I'm a Hanley stan. Okay,
I love Hanley.
Joel
I like him.
love
I
Hanley.
think he's great for what he's paid to do.
Exactly. He almost never makes mistakes when he gets thrown in there. He just can't play for too long and too many minutes. So that's the only thing. But I mean,
can't play for too long and too many minutes.
Well,
Ryan Suter.
I know.
Still catching strays.
Guess who's being paid to play a lot of minutes though? Ryan Suter.
Ryan Suter.
Continue.
Sorry.
So no, it's okay. But what? I mean, considering all the contracts that were signed, I mean, like the Orlov contract was ridiculous. I think it was like 7 3/4 for 2 years.
Right under $8 million a year.
And to put that in perspective, Miro is making 8.45. Like that's ridiculous.
He's only 31, but yeah, the fact that he's making that much is kind of wild.
It's just so. Were y'all surprised about the fact that the Stars didn't really go out and get any defensemen, or do you think
after seeing Scott Mayfield sign for 7 years? Absolutely not. I'm so glad we didn't give him that contract. Dude's gonna be 31 to start the year, and New York gave him a 7-year contract. If that's what he was wanting, props to Nill for staying away from that one. That's dumb. I don't care if he's getting paid $3.5 million. That's a bad idea. But in terms of defensemen, I'm kind of surprised, honestly. I figured. Kind of like what you said earlier. I didn't anticipate us to go as heavy after the forwards as we did. I thought we'd sign Dodonov and run it back with Glendening and Kiviranta and then go after defense. I didn't think that we were going to go out and get, a top tier defenseman, but somebody like a Carson Soucy or something like that. I thought that we would have kicked the tires on, but it looks like, at least from an outsider's perspective, it looks like Nill is wanting to address that through trade. So
it seems like that's what he set himself up for.
For sure. I think you kind of have to at this point. And some big names have kind of popped up on the trade market over the last few days. Like I alluded to them earlier. You got Hanifin, Tanev, Pesci out in Carolina. All those names have popped up lately. The first two just don't want to re-sign in Calgary, and I mean, it seems like they're kind of a tire fire, no pun intended. But between those two guys and some of the other guys that could be available, I mean, there's still some solid options out there. It's just, what are they going to cost?
Right.
Bring me Chris Tanev.
Give me
love
Tanev.
that guy.
I love them too.
But honestly, I'm gonna take the opposite position on this one. I'm really not. I guess I'm not as panicked as some other people are about our defense. Last year, we were top 3 in goals against. We were top 9, or we were 9th for shots allowed. Like, our defense wasn't bad at all last year. We were a top 10 defense. Heck, we were probably top 5 whenever you take those two together. Like, it's not terrible. We have a solid top, like, I'll toss Heiskanen, Lindell. I'm not crazy about Hakanpää, but toss Harley in the top 4. Like, I mean, that's a solid top 4. And then Lundqvist hopefully makes a step forward.
He's going to have to now with Miller gone.
Yeah.
I mean, that was going to be the next thing that I was going to mention, is the fact that Miller got traded to New Jersey for a 5th. And who was
New
it?
Jersey.
Ardell? Yeah. Ardell over here saying Miller trade tells you Lundqvist and Harley are going to play. You absolutely better believe that. That's exactly what that says. And that says
I think Harley was penciled in immediately after the postseason.
Yeah, I had no doubt about that, but I still had some doubts about Nils Lundqvist. And now naturally what you would want him to do is to be able to jump onto that top pair with Miro Heiskanen and let Miro play his strong side and Lundqvist plays on the strong side. But I just don't know if he's ready. I want to say he is, but it's hard to say that somebody is ready when he was scratched for the last 2.5 months of the season. And now the thing that I talked about with my brothers is Nils feels a little different when it comes to compared to other defensemen who have been scratched for a really long time. Like in the past, there have been some defensemen like Julius Honka, free Honka.
Don't get Sam going on that. Don't do that.
I was the OG.
Was his child for the longest time.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man.
But like with him, it was just like I wasn't always sure that he was going to be able to get back in. With Lundqvist, I feel a lot more comfortable about the fact that he's going to be able to step it up and really jump into that top 4 even, I think. So if he can jump into that top 4, that can maybe push Hakanpää down, and then Harley plays in the top 4, and then you've got Miro, Lundqvist, Esa Lindell, and Thomas Harley. That's a pretty solid top 4. And then you've got Yanni Hakanpää, who can in a pinch play in the top 4, and for a majority of this season, he played in the top 4. So I think the defense looks a little better than maybe a lot of Stars fans gave it credit for.
I would agree. I think in a perfect world, I think Hakanpää's on your third pair or your seventh defenseman. I mean, if the guy's 6'1", he's not playing in the NHL, in my opinion. I think that his size is the only thing he's got going for him, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You need big guys like that on the blue line, but he should not be out there for more than 13 minutes a game. Maybe put him. He needs to be the Fox of the defense. You only deploy him in the defensive end where he can lay down with this 6'7" frame and block shots. I know Sam hates blocking shots, but that's what he needs to do. Hit somebody and block shots. But in a perfect world, you are 100% right. I think Lundqvist takes that spot next to Heiskanen, pushes him back to his strong side, or pushes him back to his strong hand side. And when we go from there, what I think happens is I think what you said. I think Lundqvist starts on that third pair. I think Hakanpää is occupying probably your second line or your second pair right D slot. And I think Heiskanen is on his offhand side to start the season with either, honestly, there's an argument to be made for all 3 of our left defensemen playing next to him to start the year. Suter, because it seems like they just want him up there. Lindell has a lot of experience playing that top pair role when he was with Klingberg. And I think Harley is probably the best suited for it out of the gate. In terms of skill on the left side. So I think there's an argument to be made for all 3 there. And I'm curious to see how they use Hanley. I know they signed him to a 2-year deal. Are they signing him strictly to be that 7th defenseman? Or is he going to be platooning with somebody? Is my question. So I would love to see him in the lineup more often than he was last year. I thought he did great in the third pair moments that we used him, or minutes that we used him for.
I agree. So. Well, let's get into the draft. That was a lot of good talk about the free agency. All right, so for those of you that don't know, Sam and Josh are that this is like their thing. They love talking about the draft, and they're much better at draft stuff than in either me, Chris, or James. We're just kind of like, oh, who are the top 5? Oh, cool, okay, and that's about all we know. So it's like the Leo Carlsons, the Adam Fantillis, the Connor Bedard's, Will Smith, Reinbacher. The Simashev pick actually kind of confused me a little bit, but whatever.
Confused everybody except for Arizona, apparently.
I could see why they got him. But anyways, so for the Stars, let me just give you a rundown on who we got in the draft this year. We did not have a first or a third round pick to begin with this draft. We would trade up in the third round to draft somebody. Giving up our third and I believe our 7th next year. Was it a 3rd and a 7th? Or 3rd and 5th? So.
It was either 3rd and 5th or 3rd and 6th or 3rd and 7th from next year, yeah.
But anyway, so with our first pick in the draft was actually a 2nd rounder, Tristan Bertucci. I hope I'm saying that right. 6'2" guy, defensive guy from Canada. In the 3rd round, when we actually traded up for this guy, Brad Gardner. He's also from Canada. He's 6'1", 183. He's a center. In the 4th round, this was actually very interesting. I think a lot of people were excited about this pick, and I hope I say his name right. Aram Manishin. Did I say that right?
I think it's Aram Manishin. I think.
Aram Manishin. Close. Aram Manishin. He's actually on the smaller side. 5'11", 194 pounds. He's a defenseman as well. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to try the 5th round guy. Arno T. Finci. I have no idea.
The German goalie.
The German dude. The German goalie. Enormous. 6'4", 212 pounds. Angus McDonald goes in the 6th round. Sebastian Bradshaw goes in the 7th round. Both of those guys are centers. McDonald is on the smaller side at 5'10". Bradshaw's a little bigger at 6'3". So I didn't think the Stars did all that bad with the draft. Now, we have no idea how they really did until we, 4 or 5 years goes down the road or whatever, and we see which ones are steals, which ones kind of panned out or didn't pan out. But looking at all of these guys, who are you most excited about? And who do you think maybe is a steal? What are your just overall thoughts of this 2023 draft class for the Dallas Stars?
Going first, Sam? You want me to go first?
I'll let Josh take this one first because I think I'm
Aram Manishin is the best pick we had this draft.
So
I think that I'll start with Bertucci. I think Bertucci's an okay pick. I think that realistically, I think that he is. I think the Stars could have traded back about a full round and still gotten him. I didn't watch any film on this kid before the draft, to be honest with you. Been doing a lot of studying on him since the draft, and he looks like a pretty decent two-way prospect. I think that if he hits his NHL ceiling, I think you're looking at a third pair defenseman. I don't see too much special about him. I'm not as excited about him as I have been for our previous second round picks. But
when you got Robe Henson,
yeah,
Jason
exactly.
Robertson, that's kind of hard.
Well,
it's not fair for him.
Yeah, fair enough. But even guys like Artem Grushnikov,
yes, that's fair.
even Stankoven, who was a second round pick, obviously not fair to compare him there or anything. But Christian Kiru from last year, like I'm not as excited about this one. I hope he proves me wrong. I mean, he's got a decent sized frame to him. I think he's 6'2", 180. Roughly. I think he could turn into something, but I think it was a reach, and with us not having a third round pick at the time, like I guess it kind of made sense, but I think there were a handful of other guys on the board that I had over him, and if he was the guy, you trade back a few picks and pick him up, but I didn't mind him. Sam?
Do you want to keep going and do the whole draft, or just want me to start with the second round pick?
You want us to go pick by pick, Ryan, or you want us to do the whole draft?
I just go pick by pick. Just do it.
Okay, so second rounder, I am not particularly crazy about him. I guess my draft philosophy is in the first two rounds, you shoot pretty much purely for upside.
Yep.
And he seems like more of a, like Josh said, safe potential third liner. And I don't like taking premium picks or taking players with that sort of potential in the first two rounds. My concern is pluses. So he's a good skater, not just for his height. Skating is very important to me personally. I saw a bunch of reports saying that he is fantastic defensively. I didn't see anything specifically stand out. My big concern is the dude does the shell play where they lay out, toss their stick. And I'm sorry, for as good of a skater as you are, you should not be laying on the ice as much as he is. I think he has potential to be very good on one-on-one situations, but I have concerns about his control and passing in the defensive zone. And I wasn't too crazy about his passing either, if I'm being completely honest. Carrying the puck, I think he's very good. I think if he's going to make the top four, ideally you want him to be one of your puck carrying defensemen, not necessarily your puck breakout guy. But if you want your defenseman to be able to carry the puck up through center ice, I think he's got potential for that. In terms of his offensive upside, I don't think he has a booming shot. I will say I think he has an exceptionally accurate shot. And I do want to say, though, I am concerned because most offensive defensemen you see, which he did have a pretty high number of points in juniors, most of the time those come from what I call passing to dangerous areas of the ice, where they find an open guy in the slot. They find an open guy in the corner in Ovi's power play position, for example, just skating around using their speed to open up spots in the offensive zone and find passes. And I didn't see a lot of that. I saw a lot of just basic defense to defense passes that then go to a forward, someone else scores. I will say he does shoot a lot, and a ton of his points, are just based off of rebounds. And I do think that translates to the NHL level.
Yep.
If a guy is good at getting the puck through traffic, even if he doesn't have a booming shot, rebounds, shoot, you toss him with Pavelski would have a field day with this dude. Nice, easy, deflectable pucks.
Yep.
But I have concerns about his defensive just habits, I guess, how he defends. I think he has potential to clean those up and be a very good shutdown D. It's just he needs to use his skating more as opposed to using his frame.
And that's the
But
thing. There's like the negatives that he has are all stuff that's easy. You can work on that stuff. Like he's
I tend to
he's
agree.
not doing anything wrong. That's like, oh, he's got no shot at fixing that. Like the stuff
Yeah.
that his weaknesses are all fixable. It's just whether or not he's able to fix them in order to be an NHL player. And those are
just don't
typically
seem
the
like-
kind of players you don't draft in the second. You draft those guys in the 4th and 5th rounds.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about him being kind of drafted a little high. If you look at all the lists, it's a little crazy.
He's all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, he's all over the place. Like, for example, the NHL Central Scouting among North American skaters had him at 32. So that's around the second round ish when you add in all the forwards and and goalies and stuff. But then like you see 64, 87, 82, 58. And then I think even Craig Button of TSN had him at 100.
Yep.
So, I mean, literally just who knows? All over.
I think I saw his overall consensus was like 80 or 81 or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
that sounds about right. It's, mid 3rd round is where you probably should have gotten him. But I mean, I don't hate the pick. It's just not my favorite pick in the world.
I'm going to say this. I think scouting is actually fairly easy. Drafting is difficult.
Yeah.
Because the first thing I learned is you got to stop caring what the consensus rankings are.
Right.
There's guys every single draft who are in the top 5 who I think probably belong in the top 20. And you just got to find guys that you like, guys that you're comfortable saying, this is why I think he's good, and stick with them. And so if the Stars saw something that I don't, mind you, I have not nearly watched him as long as the Stars have. He could be a much better player. He could have improved as the year went on. Just the stuff I saw, I wasn't blown away. And I don't think he's going to be a offensive threat necessarily, but as a puck carrying and possibly defensive defenseman, again, that to me is a 3rd pair guy. So I'm okay with the pick. It's just I'm not too excited about it.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, so well, let's talk about the 3rd rounder, Brad Gardner here, because this is the guy that I was a little surprised about because obviously you trade up into the draft for him. And so they obviously really wanted him because they went out of their way to give up one of their picks next year to get him. What do you see in Brad Gardner and maybe why the Stars went out of their way to get the pick and then draft him?
I'll let Sam start with this one.
I'm going to be honest. I have not watched much of Gardner at all.
It's hard to find film on him, honestly.
I didn't.
It is, yeah.
But I'm sorry. If you are expected to be an NHL player, you should be putting up more than 39 points in a season in juniors.
In your draft year, yeah.
Yeah, especially as a 3rd round pick. If you want to take a flyer on a guy and bet on offensive upside, cool. Yeah. But I mean, I'm just purely looking at the stat profile right now. Like, nothing stood out, and until I see video of him, I'm not comfortable making a prediction on him or even judging his play style. It would all be just secondhand. So I haven't even watched him, if I'm being completely honest. Just 39 points concerns me significantly.
Just reading through a lot of his profiling, and I've seen a few just short clips of him. I haven't seen full on game footage or anything like that. It seems to me like his ceiling is his absolute ceiling is a Luke Glendening kind of player, and that's not a horrible thing.
That's kind of what I was thinking.
Like he can play. He can really play any position on the ice. They use him a lot at center and at wing, so he's not really tied to a specific position. He's a depth guy. That's what he will top out as in the NHL if he makes it to the NHL, is as a depth guy. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me put that out there. There's nothing wrong with depth players. I mean, you need those guys on your roster. Stanley Cup winning teams have good depth players.
Fox, Delandria.
Yeah, exactly. Every team needs them, but trading up for one of them in the 3rd round is questionable to me. I still had a couple guys on the board at that point in time that I thought were going to be mid-2nd round talents that were still there. And not only did we pick him in the 3rd round, we traded up to get him in the 3rd round. And we traded, a pick from next year to go up and get him. And I wasn't a fan. Actually, I think I think we traded a 2024 3rd and a 2024 6th. So we traded two picks from next year.
Trading up is the wrong term.
Yeah. We traded 2 picks from next year's draft. Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
I'm honestly not a huge fan of it. And like Sam said, I have some concerns. And obviously, points aren't the end all be all, especially for guys that are stronger defensively. But typically, you want to see players put up some kind of production, especially in their draft seasons, and you just don't see that out of Gardner. He'll be one to watch. I'll be curious to see kind of what positions is he going to play at the next level kind of thing. I'm curious to see that area of his development, but not too excited about the pick, to be honest with you. And I'm not huge on the fact that we traded to get him.
Yeah. Again, like Josh says, completely agree.
So.
Number scouting is not how you should scout because there's a bunch of different aspects that play into whether that's his teammates, whether that's his ice time. But in general, points it's not causation, but there is a correlation between junior success and NHL success. If you're not putting up points significantly at the junior level, the question is why, but then the next question is, can you do it at a higher competition level? So I'm concerned, but all I've seen pretty much is the numbers and just what other people are saying. So I'm not comfortable judging him at all. I haven't watched him, so I'm keeping that one just open-minded. I'm not opposed to it either way. But
I'm looking forward to his next season, if for no other reason than hopefully we can get some more game footage of him so I can actually watch him more. Because like I said, you can do a quick YouTube search on him, find a couple of clips, but that's about all you're going to find. You're not finding any, full-on game footage of him or anything like that, which is tough for the guys in the later rounds. You typically don't find a whole lot of footage on them anyway, but I'm hoping we get to see more of it over the next year.
So before we get to the 4th round pick, let's just talk about the last 3 rounds because I wasn't able to find much on those guys. But obviously in the 5th round, big German dude. Get the goalie just to have another goalie, I guess.
Yep.
I mean, why not?
Get the Siegfried line going.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a big German.
The big German.
But the one that really, I didn't even realize this about this 4th round pick. He really created some buzz for the diehard hockey fans in Texas and I didn't even know about this guy. So Aram Manishin, I got to get used to saying his name. Looking at his draft prospects and everything that I could find on him, I found actually a decent amount of footage on him. I watched him a lot the past couple of days.
So much fun to watch.
He's very fun. He's very much the offensive guy. He likes carrying the puck and passing the puck off. He hates taking point shots is something that I read. But one of the things that was really surprising to me when I was looking at his stuff is the fact that he fell as far as he did in the 4th round. So, I mean, we got him at 125th overall. And looking at his rankings, I mean, McKean's Hockey had him at 43rd. So that's early in the 2nd round.
Yep.
You look at Bob McKenzie had him at 74. Craig Button had him at 79. And then I think the lowest
Those were 2 of the lowest ones too.
Yeah, the lowest one I saw was in the 70s.
Yep.
So there was a pretty general, unlike our 2nd round pick in Bertucci, this guy was, there was a pretty good consensus as to where this guy was going to go. And it was somewhere in the, maybe 3rd round, maybe even into the 2nd round. And he falls to the Stars in the 4th round.
Yes.
So maybe y'all can answer this question for me and maybe some other Stars fans. Why did he drop so far down into the 4th round?
Because he's not 6 foot. I say that halfway jokingly. I say that halfway jokingly, but size is such a huge thing for some scouts. I think it's becoming less of a thing. Don't get me wrong. I think it's becoming less of a thing for scouts nowadays. But I think if the kid's 6'1" or 6'2", I think you see him in the 2nd round. There are some questions about his offense to an extent. He's an offensive defenseman. Great in transition. He's phenomenal in transition. It's why I had him in the 2nd round. I think you could swap him and Bertucci, and I think that nobody would have batted an eye. But I think that there were some flags raised by some when it comes to the fact that he tends to shy away from shooting the puck. When he does shoot the puck, they are valuable shots. They're smart shots. They're accurate shots. He knows what he's doing when he shoots the puck. He just doesn't do it very often. And his defense is questionable at best. Some
Klingberg-ish?
areas to grow. I think
No.
it's better than Klingberg.
I would hope so.
It would take a lot to be worse, but I think that there's some growth areas in his defensive game that I think may have pushed him down the board a little bit. That being said, he absolutely should not have been on the board at 125. I'm not entirely sure, and scouts may have some other crazy information that I don't know, like he broke his leg and he's never playing again. I don't know, but he should not have been on the board at 125. The fact that he made it, he should have been off the board at worst early to mid third round, in my opinion. But the fact that, I mean, shoot, I think arguably, like I said, I think that's the Stars' best draft pick. And in terms of where he was projected to go versus where he did go, I'd be willing to bet that's probably one of the more extreme steals in the draft. Obviously, you can't go off of, rankings and stuff like that. You got to see how they play and everything. But I'm excited about this kid. I think if he hits and if Kira hits, I think you got 2 or your 3 right defensemen for possibly the next 8 to 10 years if they both hit. You just need somebody that can play defense now.
I think it's partially that, and I think it's also partially just once again, this gets into scouting is somewhat easy. You get to just look, say, okay, these are their positive attributes, these are their negative attributes, and you rank guys on who you think has the best possible outcomes. Drafting is difficult because when people start to fall, everyone on that draft floor is asking, why are they falling?
Why are they falling? There's got to be a reason they're falling. Why are they falling?
So, I mean, it could be anything. It could be personality issues. He could have interviewed bad. He could have, he has the exact opposite problem that Bertucci had, in my opinion, where Bertucci was just a shooter, and I wasn't very impressed with his passing, while he, on the other hand, was what I was talking about, where you want a guy who will pass it to the dangerous areas of the ice, set up his teammates, pull the defenseman off of a teammate, and then immediately pass it to him on the backside. He does a lot of the offensive stuff that you see in high-end offensive defenseman. It's just a matter of he doesn't shoot very often.
Yep.
And so it's a question of, does he trust his shot? I mean, if someone's shot is good, but they don't trust it, how high of a rating can you give to that skill? So
and on that note, he rated positively in every offensive advanced statistic except for shots per 60.
Yeah. So I mean, trust me, I have my concerns because I want my offensive defenseman to be able to do both. If you get known as just a offensive defenseman who's going to skate around the top and not take a shot, it's like whenever you see a center standing at the 3-point line and their name isn't Karl Anthony Towns. Like, you don't worry about a center shooting a 3-pointer. So if you don't worry about him taking the shot, no one's going to start chasing him. They're just going to cover their guys, and then you've completely neutralized him because he doesn't trust his own skill set. So I can see why he would fall, despite what I think he has a obviously nice skill package where he can skate. I think he's good in transition. Defensively, again, I actually think he has better habits defensively than Bertucci had. But again, Bertucci has 3 more inches, and according to the NHL, that makes him a better defensive defenseman. But I think his skating is just as nice. I think just like our second rounder, he can improve those skills to be a third line puck carrying D-man with passing upside in the offensive zone this time. It's a fairly significant concern whenever your offensive defenseman doesn't trust a shot. So I can see it. I think, again, it's just a mindset switch, but I don't think he has enough skill to be what he is in juniors as an NHLer. I don't think he is going to be able to just outskate everyone at the NHL level like he is now. So I see the concern. I really do. I think the skill package is probably second round.
The ceiling's there.
I think he went probably right where I would have ranked him, if I'm being completely honest. But this is pretty much where I would have had our first 3 picks. So
So in 3
Again.
years, when he is a all-star caliber defenseman, everybody be sure to get on Sam and mock him and laugh at him and make sure
Norris
that he knows
Trophy.
that I was
Yes.
right. I was right.
Hey,
So.
I will always. I enjoy scouting. I enjoy making bold predictions, but I will always be one who, if I get called out and I miss on a guy, I miss on a guy.
Hey, I'll be the first
So-
to admit it too. I didn't have Haskinen going to us at 3. I wanted Velarde, so we'll see how that one worked out.
Yeah, okay,
So.
I had Haskinen, but I mean,
Yeah.
you and I both know.
I had somebody that was realistic at 3 still.
I wanted
It's
to take
not like I was
Robertson.
going off
Knows.
Forward, like
Everybody knows that I had Kill Makar at number 3. He was obviously going to be the one that I took.
obviously.
Because
Sam wanted Elias Pettersson, so
I did. Well, no, I mean,
wouldn't be bad.
I didn't ranked after, but
Yeah.
he was ranked again. He was ranked in the 20s at the time. I ranked him, I think, 5th.
Yeah.
And again, he's probably the
Hey,
second
what was it
or
you
third
said in
best.
2017 about taking goalies in the first round? Just curious. I completely forgot what it was.
You
I just
shouldn't
want
do
to
it.
just want to make sure that we're. I wasn't sure. I couldn't quite remember. So
I still say that. I mean,
I know you
historically, the probability of you hitting on a first round goalie is almost as good as you hitting on a 4th or 5th or 6th round goalie. So
That's
Yeah,
there's a
I'm
lot of
entertained
truth to
out.
that.
that is true. That is very
I mean,
true. That's
who-
why
Like
honestly,
Rene,
I'm kind of taken off. Kind of taken off on that one. I'm glad that we did get that big German. I'm going to attempt his name, Arno Tiefensee or whatever his name is. I'm glad we picked him up in the 5th round. I think that I think it's worthwhile to pick up a goalie every draft. You're not
Agreed.
spending high picks
Yes.
on them, but spend a 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th pick on them. It's a dart
Yeah,
throw.
why not?
If it works out, phenomenal. If not, cool. It's a dart throw in the late rounds. Doesn't really matter. So
I do still love Jake Ottinger, or the Jake Ottinger fan club and hockey talk for a
and
reason.
hockey talk.
But
But yeah,
I wanted
no,
Jason
I'm-
Robertson instead of him whenever we
Hey,
picked him,
I was
but
hoping we get Corey Perry back. You have no clue how fast that name would have changed immediately.
fair.
Hey, there's no way we'd have given him $4 million. So there's
No,
not a
oh
chance.
God, no.
No way they're getting $4 million.
No shot.
Well, I do want to say thank you guys for coming on and being the call-ups for today, since Chris and James had to be lame and go do important stuff instead of hanging out with us. So thank you guys
A
both.
little further than the AHL to pick both of us up, but hey, I'll take it. I
There we
appreciate
go.
you, buddy.
Yes,
Pleasure.
I'm
Anytime
totally-
you have us on.
I am totally fine with being a second liner. You know,
Oh,
All right.
man.
Well, make sure you guys go and follow Sam and Josh on Twitter. They're always fun follows, and I think y'all are both on Instagram too, right?
yes, sir.
I do. I
Yeah.
just never check mine. To be
I don't
honest with
post
you.
hockey stuff on
Twitter's
Instagram,
probably the
no.
best way to keep in contact with me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. Go follow him on Twitter. That's the best way to follow him. But you can also, if you want to be a part of the group, go check out Jake Ottinger Fan Club and Hockey Talk. Both of these guys are constantly posting or commenting. We always make fun of Sam's size because that's just the way that we do stuff.
very easy.
Josh is always talking smack all the time, so there's that too.
Hashtag Team
But-
Hobbit.
Always
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Always fun.
All right. Well, we're gonna wrap it up here. Thank you guys for checking us out, watching us live here tonight. For those of you that are listening afterwards, we thank you as well. This has been a special edition episode. Sam, Josh, thanks once again for joining us. My name's Ryan. We'll catch you guys on the flip side, and we will hope you guys have a good, fantastic morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you guys are listening. We'll be back with you guys again at the very latest on Wednesday, unless something ginormous happens, which we may see a trade here soon. So we'll see.
There we go.
All right.
Have a great
You
Fourth,
guys have a good evening. Bye, guys.
Happy 4th, y'all.